Wired for Winning, celebrating the extraordinary minds of those with ADHD.
Okay, hey everybody, welcome to Wired for Winning, episode 5. We've got Bridget from the north of England with us today, and we're just going to start off by just doing the clapperboard. So this is Bridget. There we go. Welcome to the podcast, Bridget. Bridget has an MSc in psychology, so is probably the most qualified person on the podcast so far, but also has a diagnosis of ADHD, and kind of an exciting story, I think, with this particular podcast. But again, Bridget, very welcome to the podcast. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and your diagnosis and your story of ADHD,
Yeah, of course.
if that would be okay?
Again, thank you for inviting me on here. Background-wise, it's such a vague question to begin with at first as well, isn't it? Like where to start from. But I suppose a particular journey is one a lot of people might sort of gel with or recognize, which is as a child growing up feeling a bit abnormal, a bit like an alien, almost like everybody else has this social rule book that you don't have. Naturally, as a child, you don't know what's wrong with you. You just do the best that you can. Those were sort of my first signs. I made it through, though, because one of my skills was like academic talent and things. So I would always, I don't know, and I think because I was such a high achiever academic-wise, and I made it through to university, that's why my particular diagnosis was missed until later. And it wasn't until I went to Edinburgh University and I had less structure around me that I started to struggle a bit more. And I guess that's when more of the ADHD symptoms started to come in a bit. So yeah, that was my first sort of struggle that I now understand exactly what that was. At the time I didn't. I then had a difficult period of my life where I had to sort of take a break from things. There were a lot of things going on. I lost my grandmother and things, and sort of this, it sounds dark, but it's actually the best thing that ever happened to me. It was almost like a small breakdown from the social masks and the whole trying to fit in and the just getting through it that I'd been doing so far, and I had to take a deep look at myself and what was actually going on. I did the traditional reach out to the GP for help, and they say talk about it, talk to your GP, get some help. You get the classic diagnosis of, oh, it's depression or anxiety, and sort of fobbed off that way. Given sertraline as a plaster, you know, the typical one that's handed out. And I just knew that there was more to it. So yeah, that happened. And I started doing a bit more research. But my one, I came across a TED talk by, I've forgotten her name now, but she was a female ADHD woman, late diagnosis, and I watched it, and she talked about her life growing up and things, and absolutely everything that she mentioned in it was exactly how I had felt and experienced my entire life.
Fitted.
And I just cried immediately because it fit. Everything fit. So after that, classic ADHD, switched my hyperfocus to learning more about ADHD as a condition, and then seeking a diagnosis through the GP route.
Can I just ask, was there a kind of a period, how long was it between what you've described as being the sertraline period and the ADHD diagnosis? Was that a long time or not?
It was a year before I came across this TED talk and recognized that it was ADHD, I would say. From then, it took me a month because of the super talent strength that comes with ADHD, which is when you have a goal in sight, nothing will get in your way. So yes, it was an elongated period of time there, but the minute that I realized and I sort of I was whacked on the waiting list and told like, oh, it'll be 2 years. I wasn't having that. More research,
Oh, wow.
found the right to choose your service provider path, put that through to my GP. That was initially rejected by the local CCG. Went to the office myself with like the full sort of like preparation PowerPoint in a way, and I was like, this is, I have ADHD. The legislation of right to choose, which is something I'd like to talk about later as well. I'm rambling a bit here because
Please do.
it's trying to fit it into such a succinct answer, which is basically that anger of having to fight for my diagnosis changed the course of my life, and then since then everything has been about I've enrolled in the psychology masters, and my entire career mission now is to spread awareness and create the support that wasn't there for myself and many other neurodivergent individuals. Hence why I say that breakdown year was the best thing that happened to me because of who it has made me today, which I can go through more about, but that's sort of the overview. I said overview, that's a quick spark notes of a life story.
No, that's fantastic. Just as, again, as a matter of interest, that period of time, before we start talking about the diagnosis, you said you wanted to talk about the right to choose. One of the areas of this particular podcast is looking at how accepted within society ADHD is. And, I talk to people in the United States. I live in Ireland myself, and you're obviously in the UK. Now, in my limited experience, Bridget, so far, I feel that Ireland is kind of really far behind, and to the point where, and I was talking about this to somebody the other day, when I changed GPs, now I'd gone through a similar process to yourself, actually, and gone off and found a psychiatrist, gone through a formal diagnosis. And then I found a wonderful doctor who said, no problems at all with medication, George. And then I moved house and I went to another GP who flatly refused to prescribe Ritalin to me. That's my medication of choice. But you talk about the right to choose. Let's talk more in detail about that, because, again, with listeners in the States where ADHD is kind of slightly further along the maturity scale, I feel. I don't know what your thoughts are on that,
A really, really good question mentioning the US as well, actually. I had also heard about the problem in Ireland. I have a friend who's ADHD, and he said that the stigma there is a lot worse than in England. Right to choose is a general legislation in the NHS, so it could be any service provider. I think related to ADHD, because of the stereotypical symptoms of hyperactivity, impulsivity, loudness and things in females, sort of the attitude here, I think it gets missed. Okay, when I was going through this diagnosis, it gets missed quite a lot because females tend to internalize symptoms more. Within the GP system, there's a bit of a resistance to slapping on this diagnosis because I'd come to them with the information, and it was sort of this attitude of GPs know better, which is something that extremely annoys me because they are general practitioners. They are not specialists in mental health conditions, hence why it wasn't picked up on.
Yes.
It's interesting you talked about the medication aspect and the US being further ahead. I wonder if that's just because of the pharmaceutical industry and how happy they are to just prescribe out medications. So I know that what's the one that's there that Adderall. So yeah, which is very like widely
Adderall,
prescribed
yeah.
there, and I know that there's a profitable incentive behind that in the US, whereas Adderall isn't available in the UK. So I wonder in the US if it's more of a something related to that. Um, and in the UK, whether it's something to do perhaps with NHS funding for these kind of medications, perhaps. Um,
Could
yeah,
be.
that's just a
Yeah,
like
it could be. You're
potential
right.
hypothesis thought.
I I wonder. I talk about the societal view of it. I feel here in Ireland that, you know, since I was diagnosed about 11 years ago now, I tell everybody. I'm out there publicly sometimes saying, "Hey, I have ADHD," and you know that's kind of a thing. And some people, you know, the response to that sometimes is a frown, is oh, okay, no problems at all. But societally, I feel Ireland hasn't kind of accepted it yet. And you know, when I talk about the United States, I feel societally they have accepted it. Medication, I think your hypothesis is correct, but from a societal perspective, it's oh yeah, okay, I get that. And I think the UK is kind of maybe halfway between the UK, between the US and Ireland. Ireland being kind of not in the Dark Ages, but nearly almost medieval times. You know, societally though in the UK, since your diagnosis, are you open about it? Are you how is it for you? And what's the response from people you interact with,
Extremely good
if that makes
question,
sense?
because the stereotype still holds that ADHD is a negative trait to have. It's associated with again, lack of concentration, impulsivity, lack of focus, inability to work, essentially. So being open about it, especially with employers, is something that's quite difficult because it flags as like, okay, I don't want to hire this person because if they can't sustain their focus, that's not, you know, it's a negative trait. I still believe the negative traits are the ones that are more salient. I don't think the UK is currently at the point of being fully aware or recognizing the absolute insane, like insane, immense strengths that come with having neurodivergent conditions in general. ADHD being the hyperfocus, creativity, thinking outside the box, these kind of things. There's not a general awareness about it. So I volunteer separately with it. I'm not sure if you've heard of neurodiversity in business. Ooh,
No,
you'll
it's an
like this one.
organization, is it? Or
Um, so their
okay.
mission is my mission. What they are trying to do is it's a charitable organization. It's been set up to spread awareness of the positive strengths of all neurodivergent conditions and what they can bring to organizations. So it's more geared towards the working industry and businesses. Selling points being they focus on things like autism and problem solving and these sort of superpower traits that you get. Um, the multifaceted perspective that you'll get from hiring someone with neurodivergence, like the phrase two brains are better than one. What about like 1,000 multifaceted
Mm,
like views on one problem?
mm.
So I volunteer with them at the moment, and they are absolutely soaring. They've partnered with the UK government, tried to try and make London the most inclusive capital in the world. Uh, we're gearing up for a conference next year as well. They have all sorts of organizations partnered with them, Goldman Sachs, McDonald's, things like this. Um, so I think the arena is speeding up extremely quickly in the past year or so. to focus more on spreading awareness about positive traits. And I keep saying neurodivergence. ADHD is obviously an aspect of that. But yeah, so we're catching up, but it's because of people like ourselves pushing this work to get that awareness out there of the strengths and capabilities that come with it. And to return to your original question, am I open about it? I didn't used to be, and it's quite funny because this is the arena I want to work in, and my past 2 jobs, I didn't disclose having ADHD when I applied because I thought if I put that on the application, that's gonna write me off straight away. Practice what you preach. So that was an interesting one. I had to check in with myself there and go like, all right, okay, so I've internalized the stereotype as well. But no, there is still a lot of backlash, misunderstanding, and a long way to go with it. I'm now extremely open about it for the reason, like yourself, which is I am who I am. Take me as I am, and that's it. These are my strengths. This is how I present. If I do weird things, I've got little tics like playing with my hair. I'll say like, oh, it's just one of my like little sensory tics, and I'll just like write it off like that. People go like, oh right, okay. So when I'm casual about it now, people are really accepting. It's not a case of prejudice. It's just lack of understanding. So even talking to friends and things, and I'm explaining it, it's like, oh right, okay, and they're interested in it. So being open is really important. Has made a massive difference, and this has been a journey in myself over the past few years as well.
Yeah. I feel the same actually in my day job. I'm a technology consultant actually, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before. And I have a team of people, and I heavily focus on a subject matter called psychological safety in the workplace, which allows people of whether they're neurodivergent or not. And I think neurodivergent covers everybody, right? If I'm being honest. So, allowing, the extroverts and the introverts to all have a voice at the table, not necessarily at the same table. Sometimes people need to be one-on-one to be able to allow their strengths to come out. But certainly when it comes to ADHD, I have some oddisms as well, and I tend to use humor to overcome that as well. And I have a terrible blurting problem where, out it comes, and oh shit, I shouldn't have said that, the one. And now humor overcomes that, and people now in my immediate frame of reference don't take offense. They find it amusing and get past it very quickly, and then together we get the job done. But I'm very interested in the neurodiversity in business that you mentioned, because if you give somebody with ADHD the right role and you set them on a path and just let them go and let them free, it's incredible what comes out of the other side. And the way that they do that. And I just if I may come back to the thing that you talk about with regard to women internalizing that. And I actually picked up a video of, I think it was it Julia Sawala or Nadia Sawala? Her husband has ADHD. She's a television presenter in the UK, and her husband was diagnosed a long time ago, and she was saying that she had actually made a contract with herself never to drive again because she couldn't focus enough while she was driving. And she'd never been diagnosed, but she was during this particular interview. And as a result of that, she's now back driving again, which I think is absolutely wonderful. I don't have personally the... No, that's absolutely fine. No problem at all. Let me just do, that's why I have this, for this very purpose, so we can see it. So I'm going to go from there. Okay. So let me start again. This is perfect, by the way, so don't worry. So Bridget, I'm very interested in what you mentioned earlier on in the podcast about women internalizing ADHD a little bit more. And let me just say a little bit more about that, because my limited understanding is, the executive function of the brain isn't as developed as other people, and as a result of that, certainly my emotional control as a male, can spike, can go down, and all over the place. But I'm very interested in you describing the internalization of that as a woman, so that other women out there who are listening to this can perhaps resonate if they're pre-diagnosis.
Yeah, of course.
If that makes sense.
So there's again, societally, historical tropes of what it is to be female, which again was the mothering type: stay at home, take care of the children, be a bit more quiet. The man is the one that goes out, does the work, speaks up for the family, and I'm talking historically, traditionally. I did social history as an undergrad, which is a whole other segue. And I don't know, it's just the whole boys are given action figures and girls are given like little Barbie doll type thing when you're a child, and you learn about yourself and the world when you're growing up as a child. Boys will be boys is a perfect phrase, like, they do this, like they're more, a boy will like. Whereas with females, it's more like almost pulled in. So like if I was to do an extroverted action or something, that would be seen as bizarre or different. So I would sort of get chastised for that. That was part of it, and the vocalization of it as well. Again, boys being more playful, loud, boisterous, girls supposed to be a bit more, like this, and girls are more like gossipy and new stuff. The expression of whatever ADHD like is, I just thought that I was wrong, that there was something that was wrong with me. So I internalized like this is the perfect example. I internalized sort of like a self-hatred about my behaviors, and I tried to stop them. I tried to stop all of this like excessive movement and things because of the reactions I was getting back. I was acting different from a females my age when I was young. And then sort of became like this, I don't know, like frozen state, it's inside me. Whereas boys can get angry and shout and cry. And in my job role, actually, I was talking to a parent of a boy, and she was quite concerned about his behavior. He'd be fine at school, and he'd come home and sort of shout, scream, and she reached out for help because he'd hit her. He'd started doing behaviors like that. And I sort of described it to her because I understood it so fully, like this empathy that I've got through going through this, which is like he holds it in, and then he has a safe space where he feels like all of this, like trying to fit into the norm of the social fabric around you growing up in school, and then being able to let it out in the safe space. But that frustration, like it's like a boiling pot, and then there's a void coming out in that aggression.
Yes.
Whereas me personally, I never had that outlet, so it stayed inside me instead. So I would sort of attack myself rather than other people. Yeah.
Okay.
Like a self thing. in my
Wow.
head.
Do you inside your head? So today, do you feel still contained, or are you still internalizing? Is there somebody inside coming wanting to go, hey, I'm here? Do you have that, or are you still kind of attacking yourself internally as well? I'm fascinated by this subject matter. It really does, because you can see it sometimes in my eyes. I'm darting around with hundreds of thoughts going
You'll
on and
see
going,
it as well.
wow,
Yeah.
let's go. You know.
Today, like right now, I'm 29 years old. I am who I am. I'm finally at the stage now where I have no self-hatred left, no internalization of it, no self-blame. All of it is gone. But that took work. That took a lot of self-work.
Yes.
So it's basically like rewriting the narrative in my head. So you grow up with this story of who you are, and because of my like sort of breakdown years where growing up, I was putting on social masks, trying to fit in and things. In this period of my life, they all fell apart, and then I had to rebuild. It took a lot of work to figure out why I was the way I was, and then work backwards. It's like untangling wires that are together. Like, oh right, okay, that's this. Let's rewire this thought. So, because I'm very into like cognitive psychology, biopsychology, like that aspect as
CBT.
well. There is
Yeah.
actually a physical element when you're rewiring your like neural synapse structures, neuroplasticity. So it took work of if I ever thought like, oh, I'm like this, I go, no, actually, that's the wrong vocabulary to use. It's this instead. And it took me a couple of years of doing this to be able to sit here and say like, no, none of that is left in me now. Even now, I know. So I can be a little bit nervous with interviews and things, even like this, and I'm aware that I'm not articulating in a way that I normally would. I can name that right now rather than feel awkward about it and go all like this. I'm like, no, I know that I'm struggling a bit with the thoughts because of the setting of this and because it's something I used to struggle with. But that's okay. It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
So
It is okay.
yeah, I am. It's
Yeah.
not. I am just like this now, and it's not as much in the body. It's more in my voice. Like I will speak up for myself.
Yeah.
I always speak up on topics. Something goes wrong, or if I mess up or make a mistake, that's okay. It's part of my ADHD. Um, if somebody finds me weird or says a comment towards me because of one of my tics, um, number one, I don't take it personally, and number two, maybe this is just because of the way I was raised. I'll be like, sorry, I'm pretty sure I didn't hear you correctly there. Could you just repeat that one more time? Because I now have like full respect for myself and I protect the boundary of who I am as this weird person. And if somebody sort of throws something at me, I'll throw it back to them. I'll hold up the mirror and go, actually, what you just said wasn't okay. So instead of me thinking, oh God, no, I'm weird, I'm like, well, actually, no, this person is like either doesn't know, isn't accepting, and the way they just spoke to me isn't correct. So let's just try this again. So I'll be like, please, could you just repeat that? Not in an attacking way, but it just gets them to think about it again. And then they'll go, oh no, sorry, I meant this. And then the conversation can open up to me being like, oh right, no, I actually meant this. I understand why you thought that, and we're back on a pleasant conversation aspect. So
That's fantastic. That is so. You've spent. So I studied neurolinguistic programming for 25 years. You know, and reframing and cognitive behavioral techniques to be able to reframe, thought processes to the positive, if you like. And I have to say, I am nowhere near as far along as you are, if I'm honest, and it's still a journey of unwrapping that and understanding it. My interactions with others are very mature, I have to say now. Sometimes at home, it's interesting. I have a 10-year-old son who possibly has ADHD as well. I don't know, but we kind of talk about it. So, there's behaviors. Absolutely. My father had it as well, without a doubt, but it didn't exist when he was around. So tell me, coming forward to your diagnosis, you mentioned that the sertraline period, the year, coming away from that, getting to the diagnosis itself, you'd kind of taught yourself everything in that month you mentioned about ADHD from the hyperfocus state. And then the actual diagnosis, what did that mean to you? Was it a particular point in time of revelation? Was it just a confirmation of what you'd learned in the prior month? And how did that take you forward as a person?
Good
if
question.
You don't mind me asking.
It's recognition and validation of who I am, that there is something there. It is confirmation that I'm not weird. I'm actually just wired differently. I think that's what the diagnosis means to people. So this label, it sounds like, oh, it's just a label, but it's just confirmation that your brain is actually different from others, and therefore that takes away a lot of confusion and a lot of other stuff, and it just makes things make a lot more sense internally. But then it also allows you to learn more about the condition and the tools of management and where you may be struggling, where you're better at. And then once you've got the diagnosis, you can play with it more because you're like, oh, right, okay, this is what ADHD is. This is how it presents in me. These are the parts I'm struggling with. This is how I could improve on that. So I think that's what the label aspect of it helped with, and the confirmation as well, because others around me, I guess, I'm not sure if she'd mind me saying this. I don't think my mother was too accepting of the diagnosis, because I think she felt bad that she hadn't got me diagnosed earlier. I think that's why there was a bit of resistance in her accepting it. So when I got that label, that was confirmation for me. And I know, because she said she recognized signs in me, but just didn't pursue it. And I think that guilt aspect on her side. This is me personally, in my experience. Other people might have different ones, but
of course.
So yeah, there's that. The label aspect, the medication aspect helps as well with focus. That's kind of a separate topic as well. It does help, but I have some other opinions about nutrition and the role of hormones and chemicals in the body as well that could be an alternative to medication. Let's say I'm not necessarily one for the whole medicalization of madness. So yeah, you asked what did it mean to me.
Yeah. We'll come back to the medication and the alternatives to that in a short while, if that's okay. But it's there's this point in time where somebody said, "Hey, Bridget, like my own." I remember the psychiatrist saying to me, "George, yeah, you're off the charts on our measurements with ADHD."
Yeah.
So it was a revelation for me. I reflected on my life and went, those days I was called a naughty boy at school, those days when I just walked out of class, those days when I was standing back looking at a group of people going, hold on a second, why do I not feel part of that?
See, what you just said there about naughty boy and walking out of the class, that's the male presentation of ADHD. For me, it was, you're too sensitive. Why are you crying so easily? That was my one. I would never walk out of the class or do anything. I was just very sensitive and I'd cry easily. And and get all like fuddled and things like that, but I wouldn't do action that like that's just one example. So like maybe we can play with that as they come through when you were asking me about how they present differently. I also know what you mean more about what did it mean to me.
Yeah.
It meant anger. um a, lo- a lot of
Okay.
anger and frustration that I had to go through that because like I cannot minimize how people who have been through the same experience or who may be watching this will identify with it. The um, social pain that comes with it as well. It's so difficult. Like just the anger of lack of recognition, the lack of support once the diagnosis was there, the stereotypes associated with it, um, all of it, and I was just like, well, this could have been avoided. So for me, my main one was because I got to such a low point before I realized it was ADHD. I thought there are people out there that don't have the same mindset or personality as me. So I'm very academic driven. I'm very like, I can get my head around anything. So, but some people can't. So if you're put on a 2-year waiting list, what's going to happen in that 2-year waiting list? The anger and the sadness, and I feel it so deeply. Like, I think my ADHD superpower, which I'll get onto, and this might make more sense with the female thing as well, is like such a strong empathy and understanding for people. It's almost like I can see the world through their eyes just through like a slight conversation with them because I feel their pain. I felt the pain of the people like myself having to go through that, and I was like, I want to become the person that I didn't have, and I know that I've got the drive in there. I just need to get the qualification, the skills, learn a bit more about it, and that's it. Nothing will stop me now. So what did that diagnosis mean to me? It meant realizing that I could have slipped through the cracks if I hadn't pushed, and there are so many people slipping through the cracks, and that's not okay. You talk about suicide rates and things like this and the more negative side of it, but that is a reality actually when you are undiagnosed and you don't know what's wrong with you and you've got the sensation of why can't I do this? I think why can't I do this is a good way of explaining it. What is it that is making me not be able to get this task done when the person next to me can? Like all of this builds up, um, and it can affect some people more than others. So yeah, for me, that's what the diagnosis meant. And then since then, it's just like my complete. You can hear it in me. It's my focus, mission, drive, purpose, meaning, everything. To never have anyone have to like go through what I had to feel. And since then, I have had so many like beautiful interactions where I've been able to help people in a way that has like truly changed their life and things just and the feedback that I get and it is just it
Rewarding.
is rewarding is doesn't even cover it because it's a selfish thing. It's
Begin.
just like it's almost like my my reason to live in a way, like just to share. Call it the knowledge tree in a way. It's like just sharing the knowledge and the experience that I've gained. And if someone crosses my path and I've got a piece of information that I can give them that can help or change their life in any way, I'll give that. And that is it's everything. That's why I keep going, keep learning.
It,
Um,
it means a lot to me actually as well. I have to say one of the things, the empathy thing that you mentioned, I always draw an example. There's a a friend of mine lives in New York, Peter Shankman. He's written, he has a podcast called Faster Than Normal, and he's one of these entrepreneurial guys who sold one of his businesses and just goes and writes books and all that sort of stuff these days about ADHD. But he when he shakes somebody's hand, and I could never verbalize this the same way that he does, but I can do exactly the same thing. He says in the 3 seconds while he's shaking somebody's hand, he's made friends with them. He's had an argument with them. He's broken up with them, and he's made friends again. And it happens that quickly in his brain space that he's kind of almost
yes.
you know.
Yeah. Yes, massively.
Can you see that? Yeah.
Yeah. The reason being, like, when you grow up like that, so I think that's why it's a superpower. I spent my childhood years and teenage years observing people, observing their social interactions, so verbal, non-verbal, social relations with one another, interactions, trying to understand it that way. And as a kid, it was about fitting in. But because of this and so much observation, you can figure somebody out like that just in the way that they hold themselves, in the way that they talk about something. If you ask a question and they sort of direct it in a different way. So what you've just described there with body language, I know what you mean by that. Like, you can figure somebody out with the way they move, or a handshake or something, or eye contact. Yeah, mine's words or speaking to people, and I'm not afraid of asking like deep questions either. So if someone shares something with me, I'll go, oh right, okay, wow, that's like that must have been hard, or like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Could you tell me a bit more about that? And I think it's things that people are used to not having picked up on, and then they share, and then I get to meet the real people, and this is how I interact with. It seems to happen with everyone. I always get to the real person underneath the layers that we all
The deep
take on
structure.
to survive, just by asking these real human questions.
That's really good, actually. Yeah, I like that. Actually, it sounds like you're on a real mission to help. Same as myself, actually. I love sharing this condition or this superpower, this fun time I'm having with this brain that sometimes drives me insane, but actually most of the time I'm having a tremendous amount of fun with it. Just coming back to the medication side of things, I take 25 milligrams of Ritalin, LA, the double acting one. But actually, the reality is I don't take it every day. I take it on. Yeah, it's resonating. How I describe it is I have clever days and I have stupid days. And I don't know if tomorrow is going to be a clever day or a stupid day, but it really is like this. Let's keep the numbers simple, just as opposed to reality. But on a clever day, my IQ is 150. On a stupid day, it's 50. And it really is. I cannot read a line of text in a book when I'm having a stupid day. It doesn't go in. It doesn't make sense. I cannot do it. And on those days, I can read a book in a couple of hours.
Your adrenal transmitters on that one. It's a finite resource. When you have those super days, it's almost like these little adrenal glands and like ADHD gremlins all work at once. But it's a finite resource. You've used those, and then they need to rest again as well. Actually, I found that with ADHD, when people go boom and then burnout, boom, burnout, it's got a biopsychological like basis in it, actually. So you're saying that, yeah.
That's interesting.
It sounds like an abstract, like, oh, good days, bad days, but there is actually a reason for that, like chemical wise. So it's good to yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's oddly interesting is I can have a run of 10 days, but I don't know if tomorrow is going to be one or the other. But on a good day, I will not take Ritalin because it will bring me down. It will bring me down. and on a bad day, it will level me to here, but will not take me higher. So I take Ritalin 4 to 8 times a month on average. What about yourself in terms of medication? And you mentioned alternates as well. I've talked to previous people who use meditation, actually, which is not something I use. But you talked about nutrition. You talked about medication. Tell me your story about your own medication and alternates as well. I'm really
Good
interested in
question.
that area.
So I'm using it a lot more recently. I use it when I've got a job to get done. And currently I have so much on in the field of neurodivergence actually that like I use my medication to get work done and tasks done for other people. When I don't take my medication, I am doing it for myself when I'm having a rest day. When I put myself first, so I'm not doing an output for another. I'm taking self-care. I don't need it, so instead it'll be meditation, walks, rest, whatever it is. Like I don't need medication to be me. I need medication to get tasks done for others sometimes I find. So that's what yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that because I've noticed that I've been doing that recently. I had a rest day that I just had complete burnout and I had to and I didn't take it and it was just so lovely. And it was meditation and again somatic, getting in touch with nervous system and relaxing all the parts that were like this because I'm so like into my work and then again the brain the craziness of it, when you are hooked on a task, like nothing will stop you. And then sometimes your body says, like,
Yes.
we need rest.
Stop. Yeah, we need some time. Absolutely. One of the things I've learned in the last few months, actually, with regard to taking medication, like you, I would take my Ritalin at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And by about 6 o'clock, it was half-lifed and it was gone, and the benefits for me were gone. Now, what was then happening was my family, when I came home, back into the house, my family weren't getting the benefits of George taking Ritalin. So what I started, and it was noticeable, and I said to myself, well, why should the outside world get the benefits of George taking Ritalin, but not my family? So what I started doing is and again, this is the exception as opposed to the rule because I don't take Ritalin that much. But what I started doing is actually taking Ritalin at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So actually it was working all the way through until about 9 o'clock at night. So my family were getting the benefit of the Ritalin as well. The work benefits as well, which has worked very well, I have to say. Now, again, it's me maybe being experimental, but I just felt that I was being selfish by not giving that part of me that benefits from Ritalin to my family as well.
The question that comes to mind is, George, do you feel like you need Ritalin to be George? To be George?
No, I don't. I only use Ritalin for the focal tasks,
right?
like
It's the way
as
you were
well.
describing that's like the benefits of George on Ritalin is almost like do you feel like you need it to be the person that your family like need or to be that George?
That's actually a really great question. So what was starting to happen is at the end of the Ritalin cycle, there was a little bit of grumpiness coming in, a little bit of grumpiness and an emotional instability. Yeah. So a really great question. And thank you for digging, actually. I like to have people ask me questions as well. So by switching to the 1 p.m. and it lasting to 9 p.m., that grumpiness wasn't happening. So it wasn't about being the real George. It was to stop the
Yeah,
emotional dysregulation post Ritalin,
completely.
if
Because
that makes
again,
sense, you know?
it's this like using all of it at once. And so I'm in a come down now because I took mine this morning and I feel a bit more like lethargic. My brain isn't working as well. I feel like a slight, it's not like a headache, but it's just like a bit of pressure here. Um, and those
Yeah.
after effects. And for example, I thought about it with this podcast. I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to give my best at the moment, but I had a lot of work to do today. And then the other choice was taking like a second Ritalin later and not sleeping tonight. Um, but no, it's interesting you mentioned that because I'm feeling it now, and it is a real thing. So that's the downside of the medication. Like you are using these excitatory, like firings, and it's finite. It is finite. So after that, the irritation and stuff is, um, it's really interesting. I don't even want to open that up because I'll just start talking about like brain regions and things. But
No, it's fine. T- tell me then, tell me about alternatives. I had recently learned, and again, I haven't done any research into the whether or not this is true or not, but I had read that turmeric was no, not sorry, I beg your pardon. Saffron was a particular substance that was good for this. Again, I have no validation, factual, research-based evidence behind that, but I'm very interested if you've got some opinions or some knowledge of alternates in the nutrition area. Please share. I'd be very interested in that, and I'm sure everybody else would as well.
quite a lot. So gut-brain axes, okay, they're they there are more neurotransmitters created in your gut than there are in your brain. So nutrition is probably one of like the biggest, if not like possibly the answers. So like there is a trial. I dated an ex-pro athlete recently, so I learned a lot about like nutritional science related to this, and a lot of it made sense. That oh God, I'm just um, essentially we live in a society where like most food is like based or toxin based, and carbs are glucose. Glucose is like fast burning energy. Ketones is like slow burning energy. So if you imagine paper burning versus like a log of wood. The reason why keto works so well for some people, and I trialed it for a month, and it, oh my God, like my ADHD symptoms were almost gone, as well as like other things in my body. It's really hard to keep up with though, so it's something that I'm going to try again. But because my body's fuel was burning on these ketones, which is elongated energy releases, you don't need the medication anymore. Because when you're burning glucose, when you're taking like a quick coffee or a quick like chocolate bar or something, it's a burst of energy and then you get the crash. And most of our like Western diet is made up of that. So that's how our body feels. And then with ADHD, that's why I don't know, they are obviously separate from like neurotypical to this particular condition. That's why you would then need Ritalin or something to give you that extra fuel to burn. Because with ADHD, one of the things is we burn through energy a lot quicker. Hence the fast thinking, the fast talking, the fast working and stuff. It's almost like what is it? Like your metabolism it just works so much faster, but like energy wise, like fuel in the body. Um, I have so much to say on it. So like that's the nutrition part. I'm learning more about like supplements as well and the roles that they play in supporting brain function. So, for example, taking vitamin K2 with D3 or something does the same. Yeah, that one.
With
So I've
D3.
got them in front of me. I've got my
Yes.
omega-3 one, but it's got to be with, it's not just omega-3, it's got to have EPA and DHA well to work. And I learned that
DHA.
from Huberman. I don't know if you listen to Huberman, he's like 40% of scientific. Yeah.
I do.
So there's that one, and then Neurobalance. I'm trialing this recently actually as well as lion's mane mushroom.
Yes, me too. Space Goods.
Space Good. Oh,
Is it? Oh, if you go to spacegoods.com, they powder lion's mane mushrooms and you pop it into your drink in the morning.
I'm taking little capsules at the moment, and still, this is
Little
a recent
capsules.
trial actually with the supplements instead. But so the role of nutrition as an
Yeah.
alternative for sure. Another one being oh my God, there's so much. There's like being in tune with your body as well. So for example, ADHD is a firing of a I've got to do this task, which is your like motor neuron circuit. So you've already fired and decided. So if I decide right now that I need to go and get a glass of water, and I'm if someone gets in my way, that is going to irritate me because between me and the task, I need that glass of water. So
Yes.
oh God, where was I going with that one? And the being
I could jump in.
yeah.
For...
So being aware
Go
of
ahead,
like
sorry.
your body and stuff as well. So the motor neuron one is like why fidget toys can work so much as well. So when you're feeling like da 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 like this, because your brain has sent out this motor which is active, which is action signal, and we live in a world where you're sat at your laptop and stuff. Having a fidget toy gets it out of the body because otherwise it stays stored in like your pressure point areas and stuff, which is where you get things like functional diseases like fibromyalgia and things like that. But that's separate from ADHD. Hypothesis on it. Medical models catching up. I know that I've got issues in my body that have come from like stored chemicals where I've just like had this like and instead of doing something, I'll just freeze. And now I'm dealing with the consequences of like crappy joints and stuff, but I'm healing that slowly through nutrition and things, and keto really helped with that one like in a crazy way. There's that. There's tools that you can use as well to train the brain. So I recently learned from Huberman as well about peripheral vision. So, one of the things about ADHD is hyperfocus on a certain piece of information to the detriment of the information around it. So you may lose important information. This is where you find yourself 3 hours later. Here's the essay topic, and I suddenly know everything about King George V and where he was born and his star sign, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And it's fun. It's fun because you basically you're researching. You're like, oh, I understand that. I want to learn a new thing. I want to learn a new thing, which is fun, but it's not great. So
it's not so
exactly.
functional,
So
right? Absolutely.
Two things I use for that. I have been using a 40-minute timer. Anytime I do a task, I've got an alarm on 40 minutes to snap me out of it and just to check and the task.
Pomodoro?
Yes.
Pomodoro technique,
yeah, but
yes.
I have to do the timer to go snap me out. The one I learned about recently, which is training the brain, because again, meditation, as you know, has been shown, like the studies on that are crazy, which we could talk about separately. Peripheral vision. For example, I'm looking at my phone right now and I'm concentrating on this. If I suddenly become aware of the fact of the room around me, so I'm still looking at the phone, but I'm now aware that there's a curtain there, and there's a wardrobe there, and there's a light there. That's training my brain to not be so like focused on one thing and to take in the wider picture. And the more you do that, it's like building a muscle. You go to the gym, build your muscle. This is like an ADHD technique, I think, that I learned about a week ago. So I'm still in the process of it.
Okay.
So I'll get back to you on whether that one works or not. But intuitively and making sense wise, it does. And then there was another one about spending like exactly 17 minutes a day, closing your eyes, just in touch with the sensations in your body. So thoughts come up, yep, you let them go back into your body. How am I feeling? And that's training your focus attention muscle internally. So those are two techniques that aren't medication that can be trialed to try and improve focus symptoms. Those are two. Like,
That's
yeah.
interesting. That's very interesting. Just coming back to one of the first things that you said, Bridget, which was, you know, the neurotransmitter production being in the gut, as well as in the brain. And there's very recent research. I'm married to a medic. Very recent research to show that dopamine produced in the gut now is believed to cross the blood-brain barrier, and it wasn't previously, which is very interesting. So what you've said about nutrition and the production of the gut, and I know there's a lot of Patrick Holford and the books that he's written and about the, you know, the second brain being in the gut and so on and so forth is extremely important, and I share that. And yet I find myself, and I'm a big believer in ketosis and, you know, cold water dipping and ice baths and what Gary Brecker does, and, you know, all of those guys. I think it's wonderful. But when I look at all of the lion's mane mushrooms, I think there's a lot of wonderful things, and I take it myself. But I actually find myself in Holland and Barrett sometimes going, listen, George, what should we get this week?
Yeah.
You know, I'm and I read a lot of, you know, articles on nutrition and ADHD, and yet I'm still yet to find definitive research, evidence-based things that say, if you do this, this will ease the symptoms. Now, am I wrong? And am I just looking in the wrong place? Or are you still on that journey as well? And again, you're not on here to be an expert. Please, it's an opinion.
I love the way
so,
that you just spoke. I love the question because we are figuring it out together. And it's because there are so many different symptoms, so there is no definitive answer. You do neuroimaging scans and see people with ADHD, their brains look different. Like, you know, obviously there's the whole prefrontal cortex, less grey matter here, but one could have a bigger amygdala, for example, which is more fear-centered. So because it presents so differently, I believe, it's so difficult. So let's play a thought game. Let's say it has a you're born genetic component. The experiences you have in life after that shape your brain and your thoughts and how you relate to yourself anyway, which like then shapes what parts of the brain are more dominant, your synapse structures, all of this. And then this is why in different individuals symptoms present differently. And I think this is why there isn't a definitive answer, because it's like, you know, these multi-diagnoses that we're throwing out now. So you've got bipolar, you've got ADHD, you've got OCD, you've got this, you've got that. It's because like the brain is just wired differently in each individual, and it's so unique. It's unique to the social experiences you have in life. It's unique to the kind of diets that you have. It's unique to you know, whether you dull yourself with substances or not. And I think that's why there's no definitive answer on this, because it is so different in different individuals. And in the world of scientific rationality, science doesn't like things that it doesn't have an answer to. So it sort of gets pushed to the side a bit. And the mind and consciousness, for example, is one that can't be explained through a scientific perspective yet. So I think this is why we're sort of at the starting journey of like figuring this stuff out a bit more. And I believe there's so much to it And this is why when you said I'm in Holland and Barrett and I'm looking, oh, at this, or I'm researching this now, it's because we're figuring it out as well. It's like lion manes may work for a particular symptom, but like not another one. And you know, there's no guidance on it. There's no rule book. There's nothing to follow. So, like myself, I do that. I'm literally like I came across I was researching something and it was talking about a coaching technique, and I know about the concept anyway, ontological coaching, which is the importance of guiding individuals through perceptions they may have created about themselves and how they communicate with their own being, and ingrained behaviors, patterns, and webs of narratives in the client, and then reworking that. Then that sent me down a rabbit hole of that, that's just like a theory, and linking that to the actual like neural synapse structures in the brain are actually rewiring. Like I use the analogy, so you can tell I'm getting excited, passionate topic. The analogy, let's say you're going down a ski slope, fresh snow, you keep going down this, you're on a sledge, and you keep going down the exact same path. So you go down your sleigh and you come back up, and you go down the same path again, and you come back up, and again. That bit of snow is going to be deep and ingrained, and that is easier route for your sledge to go through, your thought to go through. If you decide to take a new route on this fresh piece of snow, it's going to be a bit harder and you might wobble a bit on the way down. But if you come back up and you do it again, it's a bit straighter, and you come back up again and you do it straighter.
Yeah.
That's the best analogy I could think of when I'm trying to simplify what rewiring neuroplasticity is in the brain that way. And I believe that works for ADHD symptoms as well, like focus, attention, internalization, actions, anything. It's practicing a new behavior. The more you practice, the more automatic it becomes. Nutrition, just the best one is like the toxins in the environment and the effects that it has on the minds in general. People that say, oh, I've got ADHD or I've got OCD, when they don't, they've just got like little traits or whatever. Toxins, chemicals, and I hate talking about it because I'm not one of these like, yeah, let's do keto and like I want a gluten-free, like da da da. Like I'm not that type of person, but like when it makes sense, it's like okay. But I'm just aware of, for example, the stereotype of talking about keto. People may switch off and think like, oh, there's someone that goes to Starbucks and says, I want like a gluten-free, dairy-free, milk, like everything free, blah blah blah, kind of person following these trends. I went on a segue there, but just to bring it back to the whole Barrett thing, we're figuring it out, and I think it is because it's so unique in each individual because of that. Like, we may start with the same genetic difference, but then how that manifests in our life changes. So then the things that we're trying or how it manifests, like, I don't know. Like Dr. Eric Berg is someone that I follow, for example, who's done a lot of research in this, and you are so right. There's no answer yet. So when you ask about tools and techniques, it is figuring it out, and it's unique to the individual as it stands. And I think that's kind of exciting because, like, we might figure it out. You take a last bit on this, and I'll pause. You take a mobile phone back 100 years ago and you show it to somebody, they're going to tell you that's magic. In 10 years' time, whatever we may have discovered could be something that right now we're like, that, that the possibility of its existence is just incomprehensible. That's how I think about progress in anything.
I think you're right. No, you're absolutely right. What I hope listeners to this podcast get out of this is that You talked earlier about, 5x suicide rates in, or my numbers, maybe not yours, 5x suicide rates in people with ADHD in those 2 years, between, knowing and support, and if you look at,
Oh yeah,
the prison system, and unfortunately predominantly male, I know, but
yeah,
again, high rates of
yeah.
ADHD, we think. What I'm hoping is out of this, that people who listen to this podcast who are undiagnosed will be able to go and say, there is an opportunity. There are people out there who live in the world, who struggle in the world, have ADHD, have other conditions, but they don't know the answers, and they are
Mhm.
figuring it out, and we can figure it out together. And I feel very proud to say, I don't know all the answers, and I
Mhm.
probably never will. And getting away from the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people who know little actually know very little, and on the other end of things, people who know a lot still know very little. And I'm very proud to listen to people like yourself who are way ahead of me educationally on the subject matter, and to come back to things like keto. And I've tried keto myself, actually, and I like people like Gary Brecker who say,
Oh my
insulin
yeah.
isn't to,
Insulin resistance.
not to regulate sugar, but to
Yeah.
block burning of fat. It's phenomenal. It makes sense. I get it. It's wonderful. Um,
Mhm.
if I could just coming back to you for a second, you went through the diagnosis, you're where you are now. You seem, and even in the last hour, you seem so focused on that direction, working with neurodiversity in business, the work that you're doing, very busy, and I can see that as well. What does the future hold for you in your mind? Do you have
Mhm.
clarity of direction, or do you think that may change going forward? What's
So
that for
I
you?
had to stop myself interrupting you when you just began talking then, because I knew where this was leading, and that's one of the traits, which is people listening to this podcast not like letting them know that there is strength and there is hope, and there is work being done. So one thing I'm working on at the moment actually is I went for a volunteer role to do with a startup. I did a pitch, spoke to the guy who was really impressive, and I've accidentally ended up um, with a project, a massive project. So basically, what they're trying to do is they're called Brilliant Minds. They are trying to launch a app that is run by neurodivergent people for neurodivergent people. And the goal in this community app is to share life experiences. So you would have different hubs like I'm struggling with work, I'm struggling with social life, I'm struggling with sleep. And then people who have experiences can swap stories within these hubs and then learn from each other, like you and I are doing right now. I Since my diagnosis, most of my friends are neurodivergent, and my God, we learn from each other. Um, so this app is something that I'm working on at the moment. Um, it's starting off with growing the community first. So it's quite interesting because the board, I think they're going to make me, it's early stages, but like the three autistic IT professionals. So I'm having to push through more creative ideas about how to get this platform off the ground again. Um, they've got all of the tech there, so there's like an AI aspect to it as well, that I don't understand, and I'm trying to push through. You need to build the community first, which is using things like social media, like Twitter threads and things. Um, Basically bringing new. Okay, so the goal of it is to bring neurodivergent people, ADHD, everyone together for the same mission, so we're not alone anymore. And I think that's the most important thing, is like apps like this is like, and
Yes.
neurodiversity in business and these things I'm doing is to show and to spread, and you are not alone. We are out there. We just need a place to meet. and like we need our community. We're living in a neurotypical majority world. This community hub, for example, would be a neurodivergent majority hub, just like a little app. And that's just one idea, and I love it. And there's aspects to do with like employment help as well. And then something that I proposed as well was bringing in more prominent neurodivergent voices, so successful people like the broadcaster you mentioned, and I know there's another broadcaster, bringing them in to give tips as well to show what this is what you're doing as well. So bringing in like successful neurodivergent people, ADHD people, who have done a lot in life, and to go, okay, this is what you're talking about there. I struggled with that, and this is what I did. Try this. But just being able to see that they overcame that and having that conversation, I think, can give individuals watching this podcast, or if you feel alone, the knowledge that like this isn't a disability actually. You're not disabled, or you're just different in a brilliant,
Different.
beautiful,
Yes.
amazing way that the world needs. Like, there is so much to add. It's so boring otherwise. Like, these are the things that I want
Isn't
people
it?
to feel, to be like, your weirdness and stuff is like, is 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 creativity. It's passion, it's fun, it's playful. And you can bring that into organizations and businesses, you can bring that into society and community, the more that people are able to express this. And this starts, I guess, with having a community to build that confidence, because there is a sense of feeling alone. I know that I went through that, and maybe some listeners will be feeling like that now. And it's hard because a lot of it's online and stuff, but then from there you can arrange meetups and it can grow and grow. And we're at sort of the baby steps here right now, and this is why I'm so busy, because I'm like, go, go, go. I want it done now. You know, like the diagnosis. But
I
the
do.
the people working in the sphere, yourself included, we are doing this right now. So listeners to this podcast should know, like, we're doing the work, and we are doing it fast. So we are trying to like change society so that you get the support that you need, so that you understand the condition better, so that you know how many amazing like potentials are out there specifically because you are ADHD, that wouldn't be available to you if you weren't. And just to absolutely bloody love yourself and celebrate yourself for it. And there are difficulties as well that we do need to talk about, but that's where we help each other. So it's positive. Every obstacle,
Absolutely. Yeah,
self-confidence.
very much.
Like,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I feel we are living in an incredible period of time right now for neurodivergence. And the way the analogy I use is, if you were, if we went all the way back to Christopher Columbus days, and, he's standing on the side of the dock in Southampton or wherever it was, and he's saying, hey, listen, lads, I'm on my way over the sea over there to somewhere else. And
I love that
everybody's,
analogy.
can you imagine? Can you
What's the
imagine?
biggest effort?
Yeah, the people, millions of people, thousands of people, hundreds of people going, you're a madman, you're a madman. Now we have groups together where we can be together and accepted. And what you're doing with that app, wonderful. I can't wait to hear the next steps on that. I'm excited about it. So, it really is. Bridget, I've got one last question for you, because I know you've had a long day, and it's a very obvious answer, I know, that you'll probably give me. But if I could snap my fingers and take away your ADHD from birth, no, it really is a superpower, isn't it?
Absolutely, including the difficulties, because adversity and struggles, when you overcome that, that builds a finger on a pulse of life that you would not have otherwise. So even the difficulties and adversity that comes with it is bloody well worth it for for the kind of person that you become afterwards. And
yeah,
this is why I can sit here now, and I just feel so like excited about it all, and I want to share that, but I've had to go through that journey, so I know others will be as well. But like, absolutely, completely, and utterly not. I would not take it away. And yes, I do still have
perfect.
difficulties and things, but I have learned to hack myself and come up with tools, and I can share that with other people as well. Like, this is the thing: just hack yourself, find the tools, do the best you can,
and keep going, right? Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Keep going.
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, as you can say, there's so much to say on
Thank
it.
you so much. No. Listen, I would love to have you back on another podcast episode in the future, but I'm so grateful. Finally, we get to talk. We had our technical problems at the beginning, and I'm just going to press stop now, but we'll just have a quick chat post this as well. But thank you again. I'm really grateful for your insight, your background, and your personal story as well. So thank you so much. Just